In BFSI, compliance is used to be a checklist. Now it's a living system because risk does not wait for audit season, fraud does not wait for quarterly reviews, and regulators don't accept. We had a policy when nations proved otherwise. The modern reality, most BFSI programs fail at the last mile where approvals become shortcuts, is missing, expectations pile up, and vendors expand score and controls drift silently. The gap is no longer do we have controls? The gap is can we prove controls? With evidence without slowing the business. Today we are having the conversations which are we are shifting from checklist to continuous compliance, and we are doing with a builder who sits on the intersection of risk, product, automation, and operational truth. Be- let's bring in Durgesh, who's going to be our speaker for today, and dive into the topic. Hi Durgesh, welcome to
Hi,
our.
Brendan. Hi, how are you?
Good sir, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you.
Thank you. Sir, a small intro about yourself and your journey to the audience so that we have a view of what is your journey in the industry and how we can look at the perspectives that you are going to tell us on today's topic.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity, Prince. First of all, and good evening, everyone. So, brief thing about me is I come from a background where I started my career with ICICI Bank from operations, and then moved on to different roles from underwriting to compliance and internal audit roles. And I worked with other banks as well, like Standard Chartered Bank, and also technology company in terms of HCL Technologies. Then I moved to Sandoz as a compliance partner. So all in all, it was a combination of operations, then internal audit, risk and compliance roles. All these 19 to 20 years of time, and I left my corporate career and started my own startup in terms of developing a risk management software, which we have branded it as intelliRMS. intelliRMS is RMS stands for risk management software. So we have built this software as part of my startup journey. So this is all about me, and so I think once we start the conversation, you will know a lot about my journey based on sharing my experiences.
Now, let's start with BFSI being one of the critical financial organizations for banking financial sector, right? So, insurance, banking, BFSI is banking, right? Banking sector, financial
Yeah, banking,
institutions.
financial
Am I right in saying?
services institution. Yeah,
Yeah. So with that, it is very. It is that's where the whole finance sits, right? So
yeah,
business
yeah,
runs with the banks now.
yeah.
What does continuous compliance mean in BFSI beyond a buzzword?
So the continuous compliance in the sense, so it's basically uh, it's a continuous process. So generally in banking or any other organizations, not only limited to BFSI, I would say, but in any other organization or industry across industries, generally we treat compliance as part of whenever an audit happens, whenever a consulting season starts, whenever a external audit happens, whenever an internal audit happens. So we should treat it as a compliance. We should treat compliance as a continuous process where in BFSI compliance it's not a season, it's a system in itself. So we need to take care that all our controls, evidences, and exception governance in terms of approvals. So these are available for review and audit purposes all the time. So it is not a one time activity where only when audit happens these things needs to be taken care of. It's a continuous process. So daily basis or a weekly basis, depending upon the control's frequency, as part of that particular respective processes. So the process team leaders or the managers or the heads of those departments need to take care that the control health is taken care of in terms of the evidence readiness and also the documenting the exception governance handling. So where you take approvals for few cases which are out of normal process. So such things need to be taken care of as a continuous measure rather than a one time approach only if and when an audit happens. So all in all, it's not a one time thing. It's a continuous process where you develop the habit of it's a system in place. There should be a system in place for compliance. So so that is how it should be taken as an approach uh, to have a continuous compliance rather than a one time thing.
So
Did I
it should,
answer?
yeah. Now coming to the point, next point that I wanted, if BFSI is asked to show a proof in 30 minutes, what signal should exist to show controls are alive? Because as we discussed, BFSI is again a critical sector where you will
Yes.
have to look at compliance at a very minute level. So if a BFSI leader asks for proof, how do you look at it?
So I think it is an availability of technology. For example, do you have a tool where it documents the proofs which are part of the process? So you
Hmm.
people take a lot of screenshots or download the emails and the approvals, and so those things needs to be ensured that these are uploaded and documented as a proof, and complete audit trail needs to be maintained for those proofs. So, for example, if a control is there on a daily basis, a maker checker control is there. Okay. So, as part of I'll take it as a outward remittance process where there is a maker checker control. There are two levels of controls. I mean, one maker and one checker. Okay. So it's a daily process and it happens for transaction basis. So when that particular control happens, whatever evidences are being stored for that particular control, that needs to happen immediately and stored in respective tools. So rather than an approach where you take those evidences and save them at a later stage to be uploaded, so that needs to be avoided. So lot of there are scenarios where people tend to take these controls very in a lethargic manner where they they upload it one go during the weekends, or as and when we feel that yeah, when we find time we will do that. So those kind of things need to be ensured that those are eliminated, and as and when the transaction happens during the end of the day, there should be a mechanism where these uploads are happening on a war footing note on a daily basis, so that anybody comes in, asks for a evidence of that particular control, you have that in place for that particular transaction. So those needs to be ensured, and that can happen by leveraging the technology. You take help of some tools which documents these evidences, and then it's nowadays you have a lot of tools in place in the market. So you have to start having those in place for your processes, be it small banks or large corporates. They need to ensure that these practices are in place as a habit rather than a only on a need basis. Let's do it later on. That kind of an attitude need to be removed altogether.
Now, what is the simplest definition that separate continuous compliance from periodic audits?
So periodic audits. Like you mean to say, uh,
Quarterly,
uh,
6 monthly, these are
quarterly?
periodic
Yeah,
audits.
yeah, yeah. So periodic audits and quarterly audits are in place. So we know when the audit happens. So when you say continuous, I think I have quoted the example already. So based on the control, daily or a weekly control, there are system runs happening every weekend in BFSI or the banking industry. Every weekend there are back end system runs, okay, to take care of the interest run calculations. They happen on a daily basis and also on a weekly basis as well. So those kind of logs, the audit
Okay.
trails need to be taken care of on a continuous basis rather than keeping it on a monthly basis or moving it on a later part. देखेंगे कल देखा जाएगा. Those kind of things need to be eliminated or
No, I think what you
avoided.
are saying is, yeah, what I understand from what you are saying is, uh, daily issues or the reconciliation of interests, payouts, policy maturities, or any other things,
Yes,
those logs are
yes,
very important and how the failure happens. So that way we
correct.
can get ourselves equipped for a monthly audit or a quarterly audit
Yes,
if you have
yes,
a log that is maintained on a daily basis where you continuously monitor, check where is the issue, and that's how we define how healthy the control is, evidence
yes,
is ready for us, expectation is governed, so that you don't drift the detection, but you capture the evidences, and
yes,
decision traceability is also there, is what you are saying. In
yes,
BFSI, it isn't a season, it's a system, as you started with. That's the pointer that you started with, right? Now,
yes.
what checklist driven compliance programs fail daily operation, even mature?
So generally, when we talk about checklist, it's a for the team who are on the ground. For them, it's a cumbersome activity, is what I have experienced, where it's a tick box kind of an activity. So I think we need to come out of that particular notion where uh, it should not be a tick box activity rather than a proactive understanding of what somebody is doing in that respective process. So so all this happens only when a proper control mechanism is developed and somebody is reviewing it at the end of the day or during mid of the day. So in as part of that particular process. So generally, so you have a control in place, a maker checker. Everybody knows that. So that control is on paper, but they fail in handoffs where you know a maker performing a particular transaction and they think and they say to the checker that you please approve it and everything is okay. So the checker taking the assurance orally from that particular maker and thinking that yes, everything is fine in that particular transaction, just believing that yeah, this particular process or the transaction is performed by this particular maker, I have trust in him or her. So those kind of over the table or handoffs in terms of okay, this is fine with me. Those kind of things need to be avoided completely, rather than getting into the depth of that particular control for that particular transaction and ensuring that we have holistic approach in for each and every transaction rather than a biased approach where I'm okay with this particular transaction because somebody has done it correctly based on the past experiences. So those kind of things need to be avoided. So this is prevalent in most of the processes which are very very sensitive in nature, and you cannot have somebody watching whether this is happening or not. So this particular culture need to be inculcated by the uh, by the process managers and as well as the compliance teams who work. who should work in tandem with the process teams. So even though compliance teams are different in from the process teams, they should work in tandem in terms of how the compliance part is taken care of from for those processes. So so it is not, as I said earlier for the first question, it's not a one-time thing where every 1 month compliance team performs a meeting with the process teams and then just have a checklist, just tick it, everything is fine. So those kind of things need to be avoided completely, and it should be a continuous monitoring in terms of these controls, and the compliance team should have a proper system in place to ensure that these processes or the evidences which are there on a daily basis, those are reviewed on a periodic basis, and a holistic report is being submitted to the management, to the mid level or the senior management, whoever is forcing these processes. So the department heads
Okay.
need to be constantly in touch with the compliance teams. So those kind of things should be there to ensure the continuous compliance is in place. So the controls don't fail uh, asking for evidence.
What those points? What? So coming to the next point, where does it break? Right? Most are branches, call centers, digital onboarding, collections, or partner channels. Where does it break?
So basically, it is a gap from the proof and the policy. So where the policy is defined, you have a policy in place, but the evidences or the
Hmm.
proofs substantiating to the policies are not there. So, for example, you have a policy in place that maker checker control is there, is available in the particular control. You have a policy defined for those processes, but what about the evidences or the proofs substantiating to them? So whether are they talking to each other? Whether these proofs or evidences talking to each other or not? So those kind of things need to be taken care of, because assurance is the important factor where uh, even though a control is in place, evidence is there. How are you doing it repeatedly? So that is important.
Hmm. Got it. Now, what is the most silent failure that never show up until you get into an audit or an incident?
So silent failure would be like in my experience. Uh, so when the evidences are manual, so whenever evidences are manual in nature, so that is where there is high risk of not abiding to the controls or the policies. So the controls which are part of the policies. So that's a important thing, and also the speed in terms of the targets. So we try, generally what happens is to attain targets, we avoid the controls, abiding to the controls which are in place. So there are sales targets, business targets. For a particular day, these many logins need to happen. So that's a business need. Okay, now to cater to the business needs, there is a possibility that the controls which are there, just to attain the business needs, these controls are not followed. So that's a important critical area where things go wrong, where for the due to the pressure of handling volumes, lot of deviations are taken, exceptions are taken, but those are not documented. Deviations in terms of approvals for financial approvals, whatever it may be, in terms of any kind of an exception approval from which is directly impacting the financial aspects. So those are not documented. So for the ask of attaining something, we are deviating from following some basic rules as part of the controls. So this I feel is the is an area where it's a matter of concern, which everyone as part of the banking processes to take care of. And again, this can happen only when you ensure whenever a process or the controls which are manual in nature, an immediate control is available to ensure these are documented, these evidences are documented, that these are manual in nature. We should have a, 3-level check control, a stronger control to be in place for such kind of scenario. So so that's the, in my experience, that's one thing which is factor to be taken care of.
Got it. So what is we are talking about operational points where drift, people optimizing for spend and targets, evidence becomes manual, expectations become normal, and highlight, we see the gap where and where is the policy presence. So that's the proof gap and the policy presence is what we are talking about now.
Yes.
It is always seen that there will be some loops or proofs that don't exist. So what does proof look like when it is logs, workflows, attestations, approvals, monitoring, or all of it? So what does the proof look like?
So these proofs are nothing but, it can be, for example, like I'll take it as a user access management controls, where uh, somebody having an access or these changes to those accesses. So how are you monitoring these accesses to those employees or the managers or the approvers? So whenever a change happens to those controls, I mean to the accesses, so those need to be documented. So how these approvals are taken care of during the change of a department or an employee leaving the organization, how these accesses are taken care of. So for for that, there are audit trails which need to be in place, that on this particular date there is a employee who has moved from the department or moved from the organization, and the accesses have been deactivated or deleted. So that need to be part of the audit trail, and this can happen with the help of a tool rather than maintaining it manually, because maintaining it manually, it is highly risky, because as you know, we cannot maintain a data if it is manual in nature, and again it is prone to compliance issues in future. We will not be able to trace back who was having access for, be it a maker or a checker, who is a approver. So these kind of trail we need to maintain, and it is possible with the help of a tool. So this is an example which I thought very apt in terms of how do we maintain audit trail. Such things need to be taken care for each and every even manually driven evidences.
Okay. Now coming to the next point, what are the three top control domains where proof breaks first?
So three drop. So for me, so it is. So first thing which comes to my mind is, how do we trace back in terms of traceability?
Hmm.
Then whether we have the evidences, whether we have stored them at a right place for future references. Then the second point would be, it should be auditable. So whenever an audit happens, internal or external, so these evidences need to be available, so that these are easily auditable at that particular point of time, rather than people running pillar to post for searching for evidences. So those things need to be avoided, and those evidences need to be available in place for that particular period. As I think we have already touched this
Yeah.
point, where it's a continuous compliance rather than a one time thing. Only when audit happens, we need to take care of the evidences. So this is part of the auditability. And one more important thing is the repeatability, whether that particular control has been functioning repeatedly or not, day on day. And that assures that gives the assurance to the auditor or the senior leadership that this particular control is in place and it is taking care of the risk aspects of that particular process. So so the three aspects which comes to my mind, that is, one is traceability, then the second one is auditability and repeatability. So these are the three things. Once they, if these things are in, are in line and talking to each other, there is no point that a audit will fail, or the compliance for that controls will
It's
fail.
got it. So we are saying we should have controls versus evidence versus assurance. That's the first point that we're
Yes,
talking.
yes, yes, yes.
BFSI
Yeah,
proof is all about traceability, is what you're saying, auditability, and repeatability, especially when access change expectations and third parties, what we are seeing. And that's a very important point. A control with evidence is a belief, not
yes.
a defense, is what we are saying in this point. If evidence is the hardest part, how can teams build evidence without drowning in manual works?
So one thing is, your evidences should be part of your designing in terms of for that particular control. So when you design a control as part of your process, the evidence, so what kind of evidences you need to store for those particular
Mm,
controls, those need to be clearly defined. That's when you will ensure that proper evidences are in place, rather than a stopgap arrangement is is made for those evidences while doing the process. So it is important that the evidences are part of the control design, and listing down what kind of evidences is a crucial aspect of that particular control. And one more thing comes to my mind is, like, whatever the workflows you have, and the systems which are in place, and the screenshots which you are saving as part of your evidences,
mm.
and whatever the machine verifiable trails are there, like audit trails. So these kind of the evidences need to be taken care of and should be part of the design aspects of the control. So all in all, in short, the screenshots are not the evidences; they are stress signals. So you should take care that these screenshots are as part of the evidences, rather than a, you know for sake of doing it. We should avoid that.
Now, how do we prevent evidence theater, right? Where teams upload screenshot, but still the controls are weak. So, how do you look at that, Durgesh?
So so the controls. So when we talk about uploading the screenshots, most of the screenshots are like, they may not be clear. When you take a screenshot, they may not be clear in when you take them and upload it. They might not be in a proper format, and so when you're not uploading it in a right manner, it means that appropriate evidence is not uploaded for that particular control. So in such kind of a scenario, it becomes imperative that the control is failed. Now we need to ensure that these screenshots are properly taken care of. Only only then it will ensure that the control is passed. So this is an important aspect where a lot of failures happen, where you take the screenshots, you feel that everything is correct, but you have taken a wrong screenshot or in a wrong format, and that is where the controls fail. And understanding the particular control, that is also an important aspect. Somebody joining in new to the team, their understanding might be different. They have taken a wrong screenshot altogether of a wrong page, and and it gets approved, and because of a weaker control where the checker has gone ahead and approved that. But it's a strong case of control failure. You have the control where screenshot needs to be saved, but you have saved it incorrectly with the wrong format or with the wrong format. So such kind of scenarios need to be taken care of, and ensure that these evidences are part of the design, as I said earlier.
What we are saying is we should have evidences by design, is what we are saying.
Yes, yes,
Integrate the systems properly, enforce maybe workflows. That's what we see.
yeah,
And we should look at reducing the screenshots, increase machine verifiable trails, and evidence must be
yes,
tied to a control objective and tested. So that's the point that we want to take forward and see. Now screenshots are not evidences, they are stress signals, because we don't know which screenshot is for which and
yeah,
what is the
exactly.
control we are saying this is going to work. So if there is a misalignment of the screenshots also, there's a challenge. So that can
Yeah,
be a challenge, is what we are saying. And why is excel, the excel is been one of the biggest threat for us, because we have every data kept in excel, right? Why
yeah.
is excel still one of the biggest risk in modern grc for bfsi?
So So in my experience, I mean, you also might have experienced that we have worked a lot on Excels in our day-to-day processes. Whatever we have done, we have done a lot of things on Excel. We are still doing it. Even for
Yeah,
small work, we still use Excel. But that is where the exceptions go hiding. Where these exceptions are like not noticeable at all. Now, for example, you use a particular Excel for a calculation purpose, and you take a screenshot of that and keep it as an evidence. So that's a very risky control. What you are having as an evidence. I mean, what you're having as an evidence for as part of the control. That's a risky thing. You're stepping into a problem, because whatever you have calculated, that is done by you, and there are no formulas which are there, which are to showcase that what you have done as part of that particular calculation. So that goes on, into hiding. Nobody can retrieve, nobody can know what you have done in your absence. Somebody has done some calculation, some that particular person, he or she is absent or moved out of the organization, but nobody will know. When you are reviewing that particular control, substantiating that particular evidence of that excel, you end up not knowing anything of that particular transaction or a calculation. So exceptions, from, in terms of how you handle Excels, it's a very vulnerable area even now, and lot of controls need to be taken care of in documenting these Excel names, what kind of documents you are using, and whether these Excels are approved or not. And there are a lot of macros as part of these excels. There are a lot of formulas which are there as part of these excels, and these are being used since ages with the formulas. But there are no evidence, but these are reviewed on a periodic basis. So these the version control mechanism need to be taken care of periodically, maybe on a quarterly basis. Need to ensure what kind of excels are there as part of your process, what kind of formulas or macros are running as part of your day-to-day processing, whether these are functioning correctly or not. Those need to be reviewed. Those, whether the calculations are perfectly correct, running functionally as per desired control, as part of the control. So that need to be taken care of, and that can happen on a periodic basis control only. And I would suggest, in my experience, I think 3 months is the minimum requirement to review what kind of excels are present, what are being used, and how the version control is maintained. So this need to be taken care by the people at the ground, and process managers need to ensure that these are part of their monthly reviews or quarterly reviews.
Being in Excel, there is a challenge, right? So these spreadsheets are dangerous, is what we have come to a conclusion at the moment with
Yeah.
what we see on this. Where do or what makes the spreadsheet dangerous? Whether it is access, versioning, distribution, or audit trails. What do you think it makes Excel dangerous?
I think all these points which I think I have already covered this, where the access, versioning, distribution, and audit trails, these need to be these are vulnerable in nature. All these need to talk to each other, as I said, as a periodic review. And uh, and and these, there are a lot of risk registers which are in place, which consists of this vendor list, controlling in terms of the trackers, whatever the trackers are there, whatever the incident logs are there. So how are you governing all these aspects? So whatever we talk about, when it comes to spreadsheets, all the accesses, versioning, version control mechanism, distribution, who is having the access to these excels, who can edit it, who can view it, and the audit trails, who has done what for that excel. So these things need to be in place, and monitored on a constant basis.
Thing is, Excel becomes a shadow system of records of risk registers. Maybe vendor list is one thing where we see, and control trackers, incident logs without governance replace with workflow, right? So that is a workflow that we have to build, and
Yes, yes,
it should be immutable. Logging and reporting with integrity is what we are seeing in what we are talking about. Excel is where exceptions go hide, is what we are seeing at the moment with
yes,
Excel there. How should BFSI think about third party risk, and when vendors evolve faster than controls? Because third party risks are risk which where we bring the vendors into our ecosystem, right? So your take on it, Durgesh.
So the focus, it should be on the continuous vendor monitoring. So when we talk about vendors, so they might be sitting somewhere not close to you, and how are we monitoring them? So that becomes the primary focus in terms of how we monitor them, and the access governance. So what kind of systems or applications you are giving the access to them, and how are you ensuring the data is protected in terms of this governance of the accesses, and what is the scope of the process for these vendors. So clearly defining the scope, what these vendors do in terms of your process. So whatever the handoffs happen to these vendors, the scope needs to be clearly defined. And whenever a change happens to these processes, or whatever the vendor is handling, appropriate change management log needs to be maintained. So these change management logs need to ensure that whatever is was in scope and what is to be in scope, those are clearly defined. And if in case there is an exit happening, a clear exit plans should be in place, where appropriate handoffs are, are documented and signed by the vendors and related parties. And when we talk about related parties, it can be the process managers or the department heads. And approval mechanism, these documents need to be stored as an evidence that an appropriate documentation methodology was in place, evidencing that all these access governance, vendor monitoring were taken care of. So when we talk about third party risk, these are the important aspects, I think, which we need to take care of. And we cannot treat the vendors as an outsiders. We should treat them as an our control environment, as part of our control environment, rather than taking them as an outsider and letting them go off in terms of controls. We are thinking that we are the control owners, we should do everything. We should train them, we should educate them, we should make them part of our control system, so that what they do in our absence, far off our places, so those are intact in terms of our controls. So so all in all, we need to make them part of our controls. And uh, and and your risk boundary is as wide as your vendor stack. So these things need to be taken care of, or the primary focus point when we talk about third party risk. So so vendors can be small, vendors can be big, and I think the approach should be the same for everyone.
Vendor ecosystem has to be taken care in such a way that they comply to the requirements of the financial organization, because
Yes,
when we talk about BFSI, a small mistake can trigger millions of rupees in
yes,
misalignment, maybe fraud stuff, maybe theft stuff. Most of the things can happen. What is the
yes.
most overlooked vendor risk? Sub-vendoring, access sprawl, data handling, or the biggest thing that is happening in vendor management is the change management? What do you think is the most overlooked risk, vendor risk?
I think the first thing is uh, the trust in them, because when we talk about the one thing which is overlooked is what kind of trust we are carrying. What is
Okay.
the action points in terms of the scope which they are carrying out. So this is the primary aspect of what is being overlooked uh, as part of the vendor risk.
Okay.
and
Now,
and and there are a lot of things, because sub vendors are something which the vendors, again, they get into sub vendor contract. Again, we do not have any visibility there as part
hmm,
of the control. So these are very very sensitive in nature, where we do not have access to, or the control. So even such kind of aspects are very very key when we define our controls. Having sub vendors agreements, access to them, what is the scope they are handling for sub vendors. So that, I think, that is the critical area which needs to be taken care of.
now coming to the vendor risk side, what are the three vendor controls created at the highest ROI in trust and defensibility? So your take on it.
So one thing is the three vendor controls would be, again, vendor. First thing is vendor monitoring, and the second thing would be the governance of these the accesses which are there for these vendors. How periodically we are doing or performing the governance activities with them. Okay, so that is again an important aspect. And as I touch based in terms of what kind of change management plans, or the exit plans which are in place, which are documented in properly, appropriately or not. So these are the things which are, and crucial vendor controls which should be in place, and these define the trust and the defensibility of these vendors. And we make them part of our control environment, and ensure that our controls are functioning in a smoother manner.
Focusing is on continuous vendor monitoring, access governance, right? Scoped processing, because you need to have a scope defined for the vendor to have their systems integrated to us.
Yes,
Change notifications, if there is a change that the vendor is doing in his systems, how is that
yes,
change getting notified to us, right? So that
correct.
is, and also if the system is affecting the environments that the enterprise is looking at, what are the exit plans that are to be followed? That's the important point. Treat
Yes,
every vendor as part of your control system rather than having them away is what we should look at, and we
yes,
should bring that vendor as part of our control environment, so that
yes,
we trust those systems, right? So your risk boundary is wide as the vendor stack also is what we are trying to say. And
yes,
if
yes,
the risk is beyond our stack, then we'll also have to control that risk, right? So
yes,
that's the point. Now, one last question that I would like to ask is, what are the early warning signs that controls are weakening, and even when the boards look green? Because most of the time some controls would be weak, but the dashboards look green. So
yes.
what could be those big signs?
So one thing which comes to my mind is exceptions. So there might be a rise in exceptions in terms of taking approvals for
Hmm.
higher you know waiver of amounts. So the exception approvals are on a rise. So that's the first thing which comes to my mind. And the evidences which needs to be stored or documented for that particular control, those are not happening on a continuous basis. Those will happen in a delayed fashion.
Hmm.
So that's one thing again. Then overriding a particular evidence again. What so one evidence is part of the particular control or the particular for the particular transaction. So you are overriding that particular evidence which is already in place with a new one.
Hmm.
So if it is getting repeated continuously for multiple samples when you are doing a testing or a audit, I think that is again an alarm signal. Then repeated waivers and inconsistent approvals. So the whoever is giving the approvals, so they are not in line with whatever the approval mechanism is defined for that particular approver. So only an approver knows what are his or her limitations. So those are the alarm bells where where these are the areas where the controls are weak, and these are the early warning signs where a particular process manager need to ensure that these are taken care of as a daily routine rather than a one time exercise. So as recently there are a couple of bank frauds which happened. In IDFC, we have some other case in a gold loan scam which happened. These are all these are areas where manual intervention is involved as part of the control. So the stringent mechanism in terms of how we treat these exceptions or the approvals. So so these are the areas which are early signs which need to be taken care at the branches level or decentralized offices.
Got it. Now, I would take one takeaways that I have before we go to the takeaways. I just want to say what we are speaking today is drift signals is what we spoke about just now, right? And delayed evidence, that is also one pointer that you said. Repeated waivers, that's the important point, because if things are waved off very repeatedly, then there's a chal. Inconsistent approvals, that also is one way of looking at. Fix this with a proper exceptional governance, reasoning codes, expiry,
Yeah,
escalation, and postmortem. So I think
yeah,
what happened, what was the root cause for it, and how did we do the fix for that is what we should look at. With this, I would like to give some of the takeaways that I have taken from the discussions that we had for the last 45-50 minutes now. Continuous compliance equals control plus evidence readiness plus exception governance.
Yeah.
every day, not just a monthly audit. So we spoke about it. We cannot say it can be done only on a monthly basis, but it has to be done on a regular basis.
Yes.
Most BFSI failures happen at the last mile, where we look at handoffs, exceptions, manual evidences, and third party scope creep. Because while we create a scope, we always have some pointer where a scope creep can be looked at, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
evidence must be designed into workflows, not collected after the fact. Screenshots do not scale, because as we discussed, screenshots can be misleading at one time if they're correctly not placed while we present the evidence. That could be a bigger challenge.
Yes.
AI can amplify monitoring and prove, but accountability and judgment still stays with humans, because there are a lot of false positives, a lot of
Yes.
false findings that happen, and you will have to review them. They can be classified, but end of the day you will have to review them, and without review you cannot say this is an acceptable risk or this is not at all a risk for us, and you can ignore it. So that's the shift that we should do. A winning shift is checklist is completion to defensibility under pressure. So I think that's the point that we want to say. Durgesh,
Yes.
any final
Yes.
pointers before we conclude the session, Durgesh?
I think uh, we have covered what we had to in terms of. So whatever I have shared, these are over the experiences which I gained in BFSI industry, and with the advent of AI, these things are changing,
Hmm.
and with the help of AI, I think we can do much better. You know, in terms of controls,
Hmm.
strengthening controls with the help of AI. I think how we are going to do it, and I think we the organizations know how we should do. But yes, we need to be a lot more careful when we talk. Yes, AI will help, but at the same time, there are a lot of things which come when we talk about AI. So an appropriate AI governance need to be in place. What kind of suggestions given by AI? What kind of implementation is happening?
Hmm.
So from that angle, I think we need to be utmost careful in usage of AI rather than depending blindly on AI. Whatever is the output, yes, this is correct. Thinking that yes, this is correct. This is given by AI. Rather than that, uh, we should take AI as a help rather than depending completely upon it. So that will be my approach towards how we strengthen the control mechanism across organizations. And as I said, in short, AI, we should take it as a, carry it as a help, as a
Yeah.
helping tool, rather than blindly depending upon and driving our work with AI. So that would be my take in short.
Yeah.
Maybe we are not discussing very much in detail into how AI governance need to be taken care of, but yeah, in our upcoming sessions, definitely we can touch base about how we are taking care of the AI governance within BFSI industry. Because when we talk about AI, there are a lot of legacy systems which are being used by banking sector. That's a pain area where latest systems do not talk to legacy systems. There is a limitations. So how are we taking care of that aspect? Maybe we can touch base in our upcoming sessions. So all in all, I think thank you for this opportunity, Prem sir, in terms of inviting me and having a conversation. I hope my insights will help organizations in terms of implementing a better control mechanism. And thanks
Yeah.
to you, Prem sir.
Yeah. Durgesh, thank you for that. And it was this real conversation about BFI needs the right now, because trust is no longer assumed, it is measured, proven, and repeated. So If you are listening to this as a CXO or risk leader or compliance leader or a product owner, here's the leadership question that you have to take back. Can we prove our controls continuously with evidence across people, platforms, and partners? If not, the answer is isn't more policies, it is better system is what we are talking about. Bringing better systems to protect our environments is what is the need of the hour. And with this, we are on top of the hour, and we are thanking every audience who has joined us. And Durgesh, thank you for joining us today. It's great having you today on our session, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Prem sir. Thank you, everyone.